Well, welcome to the meeting, and we're going to discuss some things that are going to help you put things in balance. The title of the meeting this evening is going to be How to Put Things in Balance, and you're going to see the importance. I've taken just a few areas that are the most important key areas that help to balance everything else. So, disease never comes without a cause. Reminds me of the book of Proverbs, chapter 26 and verse 2. Doesn't it say the curse without a cause does not happen? It does not light on its victim. There has to be a reason for sickness to be there. Very important principle. The way is prepared and disease invited by disregard of the laws of health. Many suffer in consequence of the transgression of their parents. While they are not responsible for what their parents have done, it is nevertheless their duty to ascertain what are and what are not violation of the laws of health. They should avoid the wrong habits of their parents and, by correct living, place themselves in better conditions. Now, you can inherit a bad enzyme bank from your parents, a low enzyme bank. You can inherit cells that are weaker than they should be. For instance, you might inherit a weak heart. You might inherit the potential for weak lungs or weak pancreas or weak liver. But that doesn't mean it can't be repaired, because we've discovered, as we've been dealing with people over the years, that your liver and your pancreas, your lungs, all those tissues can have any damaged DNA repaired by the right diet, the right lifestyle, the right thinking. So it can help reverse the damage so that the next generation will not be born with the same damages that you inherited. They can actually have stronger organs than you were born with. Isn't that fascinating? It shows the willing forgiveness of the body, which illustrates the willing forgiveness of its maker. Totally. So, the greater number, however, suffer because of their own wrong course of action. They disregard the principles of health by their habits of eating, drinking, dressing, and working. Their transgression of nature's laws produces the sure result. And when sickness comes upon them, many do not credit their suffering to the true cause, but murmur against God because of their afflictions. But God is not responsible for the suffering that follows disregard of natural law. This reminded me of a dear lady who came into our clinic in New Brunswick, and she was having a problem with her back. And she was very, very strong French accent. And so I looked at her, and she was wearing spike heels that were probably a good 6 inches high as she walked around. And she was having back problems. Now, you know this can cause back problems, right? So I said to her, the problem with your back is with your shoes. She said, no, the shoes, they walk fine. It's my back. People don't realize what you're doing is producing the sure result. But eventually, I got the point across, and she understood, oh, that's right. I'm at the wrong angle for my back to be in good condition. So you got to watch that. We were made to have feet flat on the ground. And when you spike it up, you're starting to injure yourself. Your back's going to hurt. So, God has endowed us with a certain amount of vital force. Remember, we talked about that on the first night, the vital force. He has also formed us with organs suited to maintain the various functions of life. And He designs that these organs shall work together in harmony. This is why I say you don't have a sick liver unless you have sick lungs, sick pancreas, sick bowels. The whole body gets sick at the same time. It's just that one organ, whichever one you inherited as a deficiency, becomes the spokesperson for the rest of the body. Does that make sense to you? That's what happens. So the same is true when one organ is perfectly healthy. It means all the other organs are perfectly healthy. The same law has to apply right across the board. So, if we carefully preserve the life force and keep the delicate mechanism of the body in order, the result is health. But if the vital force is too rapidly exhausted, the nervous system borrows power for present use from its resources of strength. And when one organ is injured, all are affected. So my premise is true. The body doesn't just get sick one organ at a time, it's all sick. The poor souls are suffering. It breaks my heart to see them come in and they honestly don't know why. And the medical establishment is unable to help them to ascertain where it was they got sick or how they got sick. All they provide is symptomatic relief. They're doing the best they can, but they're only going by what they've been taught. So nature bears much abuse. Isn't that the truth? It does. Bears much abuse without apparent resistance. She then arouses and makes a determined effort to remove the effects of the ill treatment she has suffered. Her effort to correct these conditions is often manifest in fever and various other forms of sickness. So what is being said there is that symptoms are not your enemy. Symptoms are simply your body trying to right a wrong situation. So we treat the symptom as the enemy, when really it's the friend of the body. A symptom telling you you're doing something wrong. You've got to change something. And so many people are taught the symptom's the enemy, and it truly is not. That's not what you want to get rid of. You want to find the cause. Tell me something. If you go for help with a symptom that you might have, and you're giving something to relieve the symptom, they've done nothing to find the cause. And if you find the cause, you have found the cure and the reason why the symptom takes place. Now, your health is in the balance. So there is an even keel. You see, for every mile of road, there are 2 miles of ditch. And as long as the devil can get you in one ditch or the other, he doesn't care. Too liberal, too conservative. But the devil is deathly afraid of anyone who walks the middle, finding a balance between liberalism and conservatism. That is the safest place to be and the surest place to achieve health. So we need that balance very, very much. Now, can you tell me, what have I spelled there? Food. Somebody's wide awake there. Their brain is working. You see, this is actually using your creative side to look at what is this saying. You will feel a different response in your brain when you look at something you're trying to figure it out. Your brain should be kept active. Oftentimes we think that when we finished our education, our formal education, that we've finished what we need to learn. Guess what? You've only begun. But most people settle into their plan for retirement. You know, when they leave school, well, here's the job I'm going to do for the next 30 years, and then I'll retire. I never once in my whole life thought about retiring, and I still don't plan on retiring because there's too many things I want to do. Too many things. So this word, as you've guessed, this is food. Food. And I want to deal with this because this is the chief reason why a lot of people get out of balance. It's because of food. And there's 2 different sides. You can get in one ditch or the other. I'm going to deal a bit with both ditches. So here we go. We're going to deal with overeating. No one here has ever done that, have you? Good. We can just bear testimony to those that are overeating. So Dr. Richard H. Titus, a Hamilton Medical Research Group, had this to say: the physical effects of overeating. Eating disorders cause an unbalance in the body based on the intake of food and the overloading of the digestive system. The more significant the problem, the less able the body is to properly digest as well as dispose and reuse fats, salt, and carbohydrates. Some of the physical effects of overeating include acid reflux, high cholesterol, hypertension, stress, asthma, cardiovascular disease, diabetes, as well as issues such as arthritis and joint pain. Those who engage in overeating often are most susceptible to organ damage as well as diabetes, heart attack, kidney disease, and cancer. It is also a risk factor for stroke. Now, can you imagine? Like, you go to a doctor's office or even to the hospital, you'll see all these people sitting around with these problems. And they usually have some munchie with them, something they're snacking on between then and supper time or wherever their next meal is. Do you know, in North America, we don't suffer from undereating as much as we suffer from overeating. We never see of diseases like chronic cow flesh deficiency. That's not there. Or maybe lack of chickenitis. It's always something, you're eating too much. But how often is that addressed? We, as a nation, North America, the United States and Canada there, we are a gluttonous nation. And we are suffering more from hunger or from food-caused diseases than any country in the world. Any country. What a shame. He also had this to say. The Heart and Stroke Foundation of Ontario suggests that the physical effects of overeating have many more serious ramifications, such as cardiovascular disease. Focusing on food as a replacement for something missing from one's life. That's an important one. People find comfort foods. Have you ever known that? Like it's something perplexes you, it's comfort food, right? Also, as an escape method. Don't want to face reality. Don't want to face trouble, so let's eat. A reflection of a negative self-image. That's a big one. Remember what I spoke about on Monday? That's a really large one. Or unworthiness often causes individuals to experience the physical effects of overeating, feeling unworthy. Other physical effects of overeating include blood sugar swings, sensitivity to hot and cold, headaches, pain in the abdominal area, or cravings. Those things all affect in an adverse way. Now that's overeating, and we know lots about the effects of overeating. But now let's take a look at some of the detrimental effects of undereating, okay? Now, I'm not talking about undereating as not getting enough food. I'm also going to include here not getting enough nutrition. That can also be considered undereating in the broader sense of the word. And many people are overfed and undernourished. You've heard that term before. Well, it's very, very true. But look at this. For instance, depression. Mood is badly affected by undereating. Many of the nutrients in food affect the emotional centers of our brain, and reducing these nutrients or affecting their balance has an adverse effect on mood. Undereaters generally feel depressed, low, and prone to be easily irritated or enraged. You'll find this also in people who are not receiving enough nutrition. The brain cannot function properly, and they end up being very moody, very easily angered, and so on and so forth. Not enough nutrition getting to the brain. Many times you'll see cases of mental disorders because the brain is not fed properly. One of the most prominent changes of undereating is heightened obsessiveness. This refers to the tendency to be inflexible and to carry out rigid routines. One may feel compelled to walk a certain distance each day, and some people may become very anxious about keeping things clean and tidy. This may interfere with the ability to be spontaneous and relaxed. Some people have just such a portion on their plate, and that's all they'll have. And they eat that, and you know something? They're actually living in a trap, in a cage. They're confined, they're restricted, because they don't understand the mental capacity of a human being and the physical needs, the requirements of the whole body. Instead, it's how much food instead of what quality of food and quantity is needed to sustain the whole system, brain included. Thinking is affected by consistent undereating. This is not surprising since the brain requires a great deal of energy to compute. In fact, 20% of all your energy on average goes to the brain. That's 20%. 20%. 20% of all your oxygen on average goes to the brain. Small little tissue compared to the rest of the body, about 3 pounds. But look how much it's using. And yet so many people don't think about that. One effect of undereating for a while is that thinking becomes inflexible, so that it can become difficult to set priorities and switch easily from one task to another. Now, you may discover these principles in some people that you know. And as you see these things, you can ask them some very interesting questions like, what are you eating? What did you have for breakfast? That's one of the first questions I ask people who come into the office. What did you have for breakfast? They never hear these things. After I pray with my patients, I ask them questions while I'm doing the blood work. I want to know what's going on in their life. Do you snack between meals? What do you have for a snack? What do you have for lunch? What do you have in the afternoon? What do you have in the evening? When do you go to bed? How many bowel movements do you have in a day? They never hear these things in a doctor's office usually. But all these things are the answers to why they're sick. And they're eating all the wrong kinds of food. Poor souls, and they honestly don't know any better. The effects of poor nourishment on the brain may lead to difficulty in making good sense of day-to-day impressions and experiences, and this in turn will result in unhelpful interpretations of everyday events. If someone is critical, for example, this may be interpreted as that they have it in for you. Whereas the ability to think rationally may lead you to the conclusion that they are simply having a bad day. You know, many arguments in church and many disagreements can be attributed to what's going on in the stomach and the nutritional levels in the body. Misunderstandings take place because we cannot think rationally, and we cannot put the best possible outlook on a person's actions as should be, a positive outlook on what a person is doing, instead of a negative one. Negative thinking drags us down and is really hard on your heart as well. The heart is a muscle which can be eroded by extreme undereating and thus becomes weaker. Blood pressure may fall to dangerous levels and pulse rates slow up or slow down. Depends on whether you're in England, Australia, or North America, right? Sluggish circulation can lead to ulcers on the legs and feelings of extreme cold. But the most worrying effect of a weakened heart would be if arrhythmia occurred. In other words, irregular beating of the heart. Arrhythmia. Temperance in diet is making sure that the food you eat is healthful. And make sure not to eat more than your stomach can digest. And this is covered again in How to Avoid Tunnel Eating that Jeanie puts on. She'll explain to you how you gauge the size of your stomach and how much food to have at one meal. Even if all your food is good food, it can become harmful if it is too much at one time. Or too little, but especially too much. A predominantly cooked food diet will produce disease in the body because all cooked food is dead food, and you cannot support life with dead food. You know, many people come to the office and they're eating flesh, and I say to them, when you go to a McDonald's or a Burger King, did you know you're not purchasing a burger? You're purchasing a heart attack. You're purchasing diabetes. You're purchasing high cholesterol. And they say, oh, I never thought about that. And I say, let's take it a step further. Did you know that you're putting a dead animal in your body and you become the place where the dead flesh decays? Did you ever think when you have a meal, let's have something dead? You know, really. And that's what you're doing, a walking graveyard. And if you put in food that's all cooked, you're not putting anything in that can give your body life. If you put in living raw foods, they don't die. Those foods are changed miraculously into flesh, blood, bone, muscle, brain. But if you put in, and they give their vital force to your body, by the way, and if you put in too much cooked food pulls energy from the body to digest it. And as a result, you become lower and lower in energy. You feel good, you feel revved up while you put the food in first, but then it's followed by a lull, a slump in energy, if you will. And now you know why. It's pulling energy to digest it. So you got to make sure you get a good amount of those wonderful foods in, such as about 80% raw food, in order for your body to repair itself and remain healthy. You can still have some of those cooked foods, your nice grains and baked potato and things, but make them last in your meal. Don't have them until you've had a good amount of your raw stuff first. I must say, since Jeanie and I have been here, wow, have we had massive amounts of green drinks and vegetable juices. We've almost made Nature's Fair our home away from home. They see us come in every day, and the fellow says, I know what juice you want. Yeah, a whole quart, 2 quarts coming up. Okay. And then we add another two cups, another 16 ounces to that as well of other juices. You know, that's your life force right there. Your body's a juicing machine, and it wants to have lots of juice to get well. Hope that makes sense to you. Very good. Now, eat nothing which is bad for you, and eat moderately of the things which are good for you. Notice he's refusing to eat this stuff down there. He's got that look on his face. Whoa, you can't eat that. You're right. And those apes, they don't eat that. What do you think they eat? Raw food, fruits, root vegetables, leaves, greens, and they don't get the diseases we do. Moses preached a great deal on this subject. And the reason the people did not go through to the promised land was because of repeated indulgence of appetite. 9/10 of the wickedness among the children of today is caused by intemperance in eating and drinking. 9/10. And you see troubled children in ADD and ADHD. And just take a look at what's in the lunch snack. M&Ms, Smarties, and all these red dyes and all these different things they put in. They drive the brain crazy. The child becomes wired, right? And they're bouncing off the walls, and their answer is give them Ritalin. Give them less. No snacking between meals. That child is just a miniature of what the adult is and requires maybe a third meal for the day, but does not require snacks. Growing child can have a third meal for the day. But it's nice if adults can have 2 meals a day. 2 meals a day is good. That's what Jeanie and I regularly have, is our 2 meals a day. Occasionally in the evening, maybe a small light meal. But that's very rare we have that. Very rare. So, Adam and Eve lost Eden through the indulgence of appetite, and we only regain it by denial of the same. Denial of the same. And we're going to talk about some really interesting things here for you. Picture this city. It's a well-walled fortress. Do you think enemies can get in there? Not very easy, would it? Well, can you fortify a city by allowing enemy soldiers to occupy it? No. Well, neither can you get healthy by allowing foods which will create disease to occupy your tissues. Can't be done. The enemy's living within. And the enemy's allowed to get in through the main gate. Right there. Nobody's guarding it. Somebody says, hey, it looks good to me. Smells good. Oh, I can just hear it coming out of the oven. I can smell it. I can taste it. I got to have it. No, I got to think about it first. Don't eat with your tongue. Your tongue has no brain. Eat with your brain. Your brain has a tongue. It controls everything. But you got to give control back to the brain. Now, to get an in-depth presentation on how much food you should consume at one meal and how your body digests food, see our DVD titled, How to Avoid Tunnel Eating. Jeanie has done so much research in the area of digestion and all the things that take place, and she just lays it all right on the table very nicely in that presentation. So catch a whole load of that one. Very good one for you to watch. Now we're going to talk about work. What's wrong? It's not spelled wrong. I don't understand what you're talking about. You're still laughing. What's the problem? Oh, you're laughing at these. You know what they're doing? They're joyful that they can get away from the weekend and go back to work. They just can't wait to get there. Look at these folks. Oh, I love work. How many out here like that? No, huh? No 2 arms going up or anything? Well, some people like to get back to work. Can't stand. The only time I couldn't stand for the weekend to be on, or I couldn't wait till the weekend was over, was when I first met Jeanie. And the only time I could see her was at our workplace. For me, a weekend was a month long. I had Sabbath and Sunday. Well, at that time I had Saturday and Sunday to wait. When am I going to see her again? And then Monday. And the week went by so fast. Too fast. And then that dreaded weekend came again. I'd be without her. Well, I'm glad to say that problem was solved. We don't spend much time together. But look at these startling statistics about work. In the United States, and that would include us, 85.8% of males and 66.5% of females work more than 40 hours per week. Do you realize that's too much? You know these 12-hour shifts that nurses and people in the medical profession, and now many other professions have to go on? Do you realize they are very damaging to the body, those kind of shifts? And yet what's it all done for? The sake of money. I tell you, I refuse to work that. I know my limitations. It's too bad that it's too soon we get old. Too late we get smart. Right? And we learn how to live life when life is going to be over? Well, I'm glad to say that I think middle age should be 60 years old. And after that, you collect another 60 years of pension from the government and just enjoy yourself. Sound good? If you live your life in a healthful way, you'll manage to collect a large group of pension checks if from 60, 65, right on. Right on. Also, look at this. According to the United Nations International Labor Organization, Americans work 137 more hours per year than Japanese workers. And you know the Japanese are hard workers, but this is what's going on. They work 260 more hours per year than British workers, and look at this, 499 more hours per year than French workers. I think we should all pack up and move to France. You know? And they get a 1-month paid vacation in France. That's mandatory. That's law. You got to beg for time off in North America, don't you? There's something wrong. You know, we've got to settle down and say, we're not going to put up with this. We're killing ourselves. We're overworking. But that's not the worst. Using this data by the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics, the average productivity per American worker has increased 400% since 1950. Now just think logically about that. One way to look at that is that it should only take 1/4 the work hours, or 11 hours per week, to afford the same standard of living as a worker in 1950. Or our standard of living should be 4 times higher. Is that the case? There's something wrong here. Obviously not someone is profiting. It's just not the average American worker. People are working themselves into a grave, but the worst is yet to come. What have we done to our children? According to the Center for American Progress on the topic of work and family life balance, in 1960, only 20% of mothers worked. Today, 70% of American children live in households where all adults are employed. What is happening to those children that have no mother around, no parent? We see the effects in our society, and we haven't yet begun to see the ill effects that are going to be caused by our neglect of our families and our overworking. What has this done to us? We think we're accomplishing something, but really, we're not accomplishing very much at all. So, working principles. There it is. We're going to deal with that. Working principles. Take a look at this with me. Just think with me. When we spend most waking hours working on a project until it is finished, the project controls us. You ever thought about that? That's something to put into your thinking. Is something pulling your time so much that as soon as you get up, you have to get at it, and you got to be struggling to leave it to get something done? That means it's controlling you. It's ruining your life. So, when we give a certain amount of time to the project and cease working when the time is up, we control the project. Did you know that we're supposed to be in control? And yet we're not. The best way to do that is make yourself a schedule. Or a schedule, whichever you prefer. Depends on whether you went to school or shul, right? So do that. Make yourself a schedule and see what you can do to make your life more under your control. Also, if something controls us, then it logically follows that we are out of control because something else is governing our actions day in, day out. And if we are out of control in just one area of life, it will lead to intemperance in every other area of life. Because if you've got a piece of pie and you have 6 people, if you divide the pie 6 pieces equally, everybody gets the same share. But if you cut your own piece a little bit larger, that means all the other pieces have to be shorter. So when you're working too much in one area of your life or spending too much time in it, you actually have less time to focus on the more important things in life. Remember, the urgent things in life will overrule the important things in life if you don't watch it. You've got to be very, very careful. Those who make great exertions to accomplish just so much work in a given time, and I've been there, and continue to labor when their judgment tells them they should rest, are never gainers. They are living on borrowed capital. They are expending the vital force which they will need at a future time. God has provided us with constitutional force which will be needed at different periods of our lives. If we recklessly exhaust this force by continual overtaxation, we shall sometime be the loser. Now, an enzyme bank, vital force, that's what it is. It's your enzyme bank. And you are born with an enzyme bank. Throughout your life, there are different areas where the enzymes are going to be needed. Your vital force is needed. So I've put increments of, say, 21 years of age, 30, 45, 60, 75, 90, and 100. Take a look at this. Here's the bottle that I put up here. From your parents, you inherit a certain amount of enzyme potential. This bottle here is full. Some people don't get a full bottle. But if you're going to overwork, you're burning up your enzyme potential, your vital force. So if you insist on going to school, and have you seen some of the hours they have in some of these schools, universities, and colleges? And the stress that is made on the brain as they try and learn all the things they're supposed to remember in class? It's like a parroting situation. And then when they come home, they've got to spend how much time studying? Their brain is literally starving. Their stress load is great, and they don't even see it. Why? Because they've had this stress load since they first started going into school and getting to the later grades like 6, 7, 8, junior high, as used to call it. And it is terrible the way that it's done. You look at the cafeteria. Are there any foods in the cafeterias that will feed the brain? No. And yet they expect these students to produce great results on their exams. That's not going to happen. There's not enough exercise, not enough water, not enough fresh air, not enough temperance and things. And then, when you consider that, all the stresses of things you have to remember, all the classes that are crammed in, this is stressing out the life force so much. And there's a lot of learning that's actually wasted time learning. They're not things that can benefit you or anybody else's life. That's a terrible situation. This poor fellow here falling asleep on his computer. I've seen that happen with people just so tired. What kind of a force are we getting? Anyway, so you use a whole lot of stress in school. So by the time you're 30, 25 to 30, you've used up half your enzyme bank. That means you might make it to 60 before diseases really start going in, or maybe even 50, 45. You can't do that and burn this candle at both ends, but this is really interesting. This class, talking about the physical labor, now we're talking about the brain workers in the colleges and things. Look at this. This class, the physical laborer, fall more readily if attacked by disease. The system is vitalized by the electrical force of the brain to resist disease. Isn't that interesting? So anybody who's just doing labor, comes home, watches the television and goes to bed, they are robbing themselves of vital power to resist disease. If they come home and do some study, especially studying the Word of God, or studying in general to accomplish greater things in their life, they will actually have better brain function than somebody who just goes to university and studies all the time. Because their brain is enacted by their physical activity, and the physical activity is improved by the brain. Using things like ping pong is a great exercise for the brain and the muscles and the cardiovascular system, because ping pong requires every single brain function to perform. And when you finally get the ping pong down to a science with one paddle, switch hands and learn it the other way. And then go at it with two paddles and see what you can do. But the key with the ping pong is keep the ball on the table. Don't try and get your opponent to miss the ball. Try and keep it on the table. You'll actually use more brain function. The disinterested benevolence, which is the characteristic of God, also has a root in man. We have the capability of serving others. So you want them to win. You notice it's the opposite. The devil wants to take advantage of a person's weak point, right? The Christian should be covering the weak point so the person is not disabled or overwrought. And so keeping that ball on the table, when Jeanie and I play, that's what we do. And you think it's easy to do? Nope. But you got to do it. It uses a lot more of the brain you've been gifted with by the Lord. Overworking, the incidence of both death and hospitalization in those with higher workloads was more than twice that in the group with low workloads. Increased pace of work over the preceding 5 years and a lack of social contact with colleagues during spare time were also associated with an increased risk of myocardial infarction. That means heart attack taking place. So now we've dealt with work. Let's deal with exercise. Exercise, a deadly thing for people. Exercise. Over-exercise or compulsive exercising is a problem when the person is scheduling life around exercise, just like people with eating disorders schedule their lives around eating or not eating, according to the Paige Weiner, a certified personal trainer. A compulsive exerciser would rather exercise than spend time with friends or family, go to social events, and may even miss work and important appointments. You've heard of Iron Man? You know how much they have to exercise and prepare for the Iron Man? Oh, that is just... I've dealt with somebody. I'm going to share something as we go along a little bit here about an Ironman triathlon athlete that I had the pleasure of working with in my office because of some problem he was going through. Besides isolating oneself, exercising too hard for too long can do damage to one's body. Muscle strains and sprains, as well as stress fractures, are common among those who over-exercise, and with fatigue often comes lowered immune resistance. So I was working with this Ironman triathlete, and the reason why he came to see me was because his doctor recommended that he come see me, because nothing they could do could help this man. He had ulcers in his mouth, and the strongest antibiotics couldn't even touch the ulcers. And so that tells me something. Well, those are powerful antibiotics. If the antibiotics will kill the poisons and things, they should work, right? But his body wasn't healing, and he was getting worse and worse. So when he came into my office, I didn't know he was an Ironman triathlete. So I saw that he was quite physically fit and appeared that way, and I said, after looking at his blood, I noticed there was no white blood cells. And I said, Your immune system is really quite low here. He says, yeah, I'm unable to get rid of this infection in my mouth, all these sores. And so I said, what do you do? Do you exercise? He says, oh, yeah, I exercise. I said, well, how much do you exercise? He says, about 8 hours a day. I said, 8 hours a day? When he said that, I knew that his immune system mediated and his antibody-mediated immunity was on hold. You see, it's a fight or flight syndrome. Whenever you're stressed or feeling under great pressure, your immune system goes on hold while your body takes care of getting you away from a stressful situation, a life-threatening situation. So here was this man, his whole mouth was full of sores, and his immune system couldn't do a thing about it because it was inactivated through his over-exercise. So I said to him, what do you do? He says, I'm an Ironman triathlete. And I said, he says, I've got to train like next year. I'm coming up and I got to practice 8 hours a day. I said, look, if you want to get rid of that infection in your mouth, exercise 1 hour a day. He goes, oh, I can't do that. I said, oh, sure you can, because you got a choice to make here. Either you exercise 1 hour a day or you get worse and worse with this infection in your mouth. And I told him why this was taking place. So he said, okay, I'll do it. I said, it should take a couple of weeks, maybe a month to turn this thing around. You know, he phoned just after 2 weeks was up and he said, the infection is totally gone. Wow, that showed me something interesting. The antibiotics, the drugs, didn't do a thing. The only thing that worked was that his system kicked in and his body worked. Those natural killer cells, right to work and got rid of what was taking place in his mouth. But you know something? When it says that drugs never cure disease, that if the body has enough strength, it'll kick the drug out and heal itself. But the drug should never be given credit. And I saw it myself in the action of this man. Wow, what a difference. He was a happy camper, by the way, when his disease disappeared. And he said he's going to watch his exercise. He's going to change his diet so he's got more energy. And if you would watch some of these, the man who's a Vega, he produces the Vega supplements. He's an Ironman triathlete and a vegan vegetarian. He discovered when he got away from all the animal products and all the things that he shouldn't be eating, his energy levels increased. He did way better performance. And people are discovering that time and time again. So also, with the over-exercising, exercise is one of the best physical activities you can do to increase your health. But too much exercise can cause negative effects on your body. According to research done in Toronto, People who did aerobic exercise 5 days per week for more than 40 minutes had lowered antibody production compared to those who did aerobic exercise only 3 days per week. You see, validating what I've just been saying to you, you can't over-exercise too much without hurting your body. And so you don't want to over-exercise. Just do exercise moderately. By exercising too much, you can disrupt the chemical balance in your body. This can cause certain health problems and stress on the immune system. Have you ever wondered why bodybuilders and marathon runners look older than their real age? People who have dedicated their whole lives to these kinds of sports exercise more than what is needed. Too much exercise can increase production of cortisol and pro-inflammatory chemicals. These chemicals can cause tissue damage and promote premature aging. Over-exercising also suppresses the immune system, which can make people susceptible to disease-causing microorganisms. That's what my friend was going through. That's what he was suffering. Consistent over-exercise can cause long-term body damage, including osteoporosis. Osteoporosis. You are at an increased risk if you continually work out with existing injuries. Exercising at such intensity can also strain the heart. If you take diet pills, you place yourself at risk of coma and even death. Now you think how many people take diet pills and exercise and try to get rid of the weight. They are putting their life in a very life-threatening position. Life-threatening. Compulsive exercising can also lead to other behaviors such as anorexia. Anorexia. A combination of aerobic exercise and strength training is necessary to help you maintain your weight and your overall health. MayoClinic.com recommends moderate exercise for a minimum of 30 minutes a day, but do not exceed 300 minutes per week. That is very good. I say exercise 6 days a week. Take 30 minutes to an hour each day to exercise. When Jeanie and I are here, we're walking every morning. We go walking for an hour up those nice hills out to Fraser Valley Parkway or whatever, Fraser Parkway, whatever, right down and back again. Great stuff. It's too bad there's so much traffic on the road, going by, but it's a nice walk. And you ought to do it. You need that exercise every single day. There is no exercise that will prove as beneficial to every part of the body as walking. There's your best one. Never mind the aerobics. Walking is fantastic. Active walking in the open air will do more for women to preserve them in health if they are well than any other means. Walking is also one of the most efficient remedies for the recovery of health of the invalid. The hands and arms are exercised as well as the limbs. That's important. Morning exercise in walking in the free, notice that? It's free, invigorating air of heaven, or cultivating flowers, small fruits, and vegetables is necessary to a healthful circulation of the blood. It is the surest safeguard against colds, coughs, congestions of the brain and lungs, inflammation of the liver, the kidneys, and the lungs, and 100 other diseases. Pretty interesting. To try to exercise moderately at first. Have rules to govern you. Walk. Notice the exclamations there? It starts, walk. Yes, walk. If possible, you possibly can walk. So I guess there's a lot of emphasis on walk, walk, walk. And if you find your walking is just not getting your heart rate up, put ankle weights on, put wrist weights on, and you'll feel, boy, my cardio's working there, but it works every single muscle and feeds the brain. When you're walking properly, it creates something in your brain called brain-derived neurotrophic factor, which helps you learn faster, retain things better in your memory. All your learning cognitive skills are improved immensely by exercise. And if you finish exercising and you like to study, your study is greatly enhanced. Your understanding is greatly enhanced. So try it a short distance at first. You who think walking is impossible, you will no doubt become weary. Your side may ache, your back give you pain, but this should not frighten you. Your limbs may feel weak. And no wonder when you have not used them much more than as if you had no limbs. She had a sense of humor, didn't she? No wonder they're not doing so good, right? Now, we've talked about food, we've talked about work, And we've talked about exercise. What's left? Key important thing here. What's left? What is that? Drinking. Well, no, not drinking, but too much rest. Too much rest. Now, there's a killer for you. Too much rest. So let's take a look. Laziness is the biggest enemy of life. If you are lazy, then you will not acquire any significant position in your life and will always remain confused. Laziness is a disease which slowly steals everything from us. The biggest attribute of laziness is that we don't understand its ill effects on our immediate present, and afterwards we can only have regret for what we have failed to accomplish. Does that make sense to you? You know, I could have been I've heard people say this, I could have been a concert pianist. But I just, 30 years ago, if I'd done that and kept it up, I would have been there. But laziness caused them not to do that. And so all they have is regret for what they could have done had they gotten out of bed and just spent the time practicing. You know, when I was young, I would go to bed, when I was working in the nightclubs and the bars and things, I'd go to bed at about 2 o'clock in the morning, and I was up at 6 o'clock. That's a violation of the laws of health, by the way, getting too little sleep. But I'd be practicing. I would practice 8 hours a day. And then I'd play 4 hours every night, playing. And in between, I'd study music, and I'd think about all the things I had to do and I wanted to accomplish. And I had goals set. When I was 30, I was going to have my own album and have hits on the radio. And everybody would tell me, "You're crazy. Why do you work so hard? Why is it you play the guitar so much your fingers bleed? Why do you keep doing that?" And I learned how to play the guitar upside down. And I learned to play it on my head. And I learned to play it with my teeth. And I do these things to entertain people. And guess what? People were lining up to see me play. They were paying money. And I was enjoying myself. I couldn't believe it. It was just great. But you see, having those goals, having things to do, get rid of the laziness. Do something with your life. Your life was given you so you could do something. Do all that you can, but acknowledge the laws of health in every single aspect. So when people told me I couldn't do a thing, I came back to see my old friends in St. John, New Brunswick, 37 years after leaving there, and I discovered I had hits on the radio back then. And they said, "He did it." I left the poor side of town and ended up playing with all the superstars that were on the radio when I was a teenager. And I'll tell you, I lost a lot in the process. But it was great to be able to accomplish something that people said you could never do it. And I said, well, if it's humanly possible, I'm a human being, I can do it, right? Don't limit yourself. Get off the couch and do something with your life, with the talents you've been given. So, laziness not only leads to mental disorders, but it also affects our body and health. Due to this habit, the blood does not circulate properly in our body, and this leads to a decrease in the quantity of pure blood in our body. If the body parts do not get the pure blood, they become less efficient, and the energy level of the person drops significantly. For proper blood circulation, we should have an active body. By getting pure and well oxygenated blood, all the body parts will remain healthy. You've noticed from our lectures now, you've got to circulate the blood to get things happening, right? The brains of lazy persons do not function properly. They have a weak memory. They take much time to answer any question. Sometimes they don't even understand the question, thus become unable to answer them. To become intelligent, skillful, and efficient, we should quit laziness first. Just do it. Just get up off the couch, do it. If you've got something you wanted to do with your life, but you figure, well, I'm just a little bit too tired now, just do something. Have a green smoothie. Get up and do something with the energy you receive from it. Now, a synonym for the word balanced is temperate. Temperate, that's your word, balanced. And yet, with scarcely a thought or a care, men and women of the present generation indulge in temperance by surfeiting and drunkenness, and thereby leave, as a legacy for the next generation, disease, enfeebled intellects, and polluted morals. So all these things affect your thinking, your whole life, and all those people around you. Totally. You'll notice that each one of the 8 natural doctors affects the other 7. If you've got bad nutrition, you can't exercise properly. If you've got poor nutrition, your body cannot hold water. Remember me telling you about your cells? Poor nutrition causes the cells to be made wrong. They're like a dam with a hole in it, and they can't hold water to function properly. Poor nutrition causes sunshine to cause your skin to have cancer when your skin's not fed properly. So I'm trying to illustrate they all affect one another synergistically. Poor nutrition gives you a lack of temperance. You'll eat things to keep you going, and thus you'll overeat of things you shouldn't eat. Poor nutrition enables your body not to get as much oxygen from the air as you should. Poor nutrition causes you to have poor rest. Don't get enough sleep properly. And poor nutrition causes you to even doubt God and even not understand the Word. So I could go through every single one of these and show you how they affect every other one. As I taught you before, the body is synergistically woven, created, and functioning. And so every single aspect of our life is going to affect every other aspect of our life. There's got to be the balance. Your health is in the balance. Not studying too hard, not exercising too hard, or not enough, in either case. Not working enough. But in closing, it must be kept before the people that the right balance of the mental and moral powers depends in a great degree on the right conditions of the physical system. All narcotics and unnatural stimulants that enfeeble and degrade the physical nature tend to lower the tone of the intellect and morals. Intemperance lies at the foundation of the moral depravity of the world. So keeping things in balance is the very best thing you can do. Make yourself a schedule, take a look at your life and see where your priorities are, and see where you have an inordinate amount of attention going to something which should receive less attention, that other more important areas can receive the extra attention they might need. Blessings to you all.